Is trading for a quarterback Zach Wilson a possibility for the Saints? So I have seen this on 3 different places now. I've seen this rumor on Off the Bench. I've seen this rumor on a title of it on After Further Review. I haven't watched these videos, but I've seen it here, After Further Review, and I saw it on the Saints Reddit. Let me put this really clear, okay? When it comes to the Saints possibly trading for Zach Wilson, why the would we do that? Zach Wilson is garbage. I'm talking absolute compost. Throw a banana peel and some eggshells in there, put it in your garden, whatever. Garbage compost trash. Okay? This is a guy who cannot play at all. Has never shown he can play. If you're going to go get Zach Wilson, you should have been involved in getting Joe Flacco, or you should have been involved in getting Mac Jones. There's only 2 reasons to have like a backup quarterback. Or there's 2 lines of thinking to have a backup quarterback. Not 2 reasons, but there's 2 lines of thinking. The first line is our backup quarterback is our quarterback of the future. We are developing that quarterback, and then whenever it's his time, he'll play. The other line of thinking is we need a backup quarterback who can step in if there's an injury and win us games. If your backup quarterback doesn't achieve one of those 2 things, you're in a big problem. Funnily enough, Zach Wilson doesn't achieve either one of those things. Why in the hell would you give anything to get Zach Wilson? Like I said, you could have Joe Flacco. You could have had Joe Flacco for really cheap. Really, really cheap. And that's a great backup quarterback to have. Because if Derek Carr does go down like he did last year, if he does get injured, you don't want Zach Wilson stepping in there. You sure as hell don't want Zach Wilson stepping in there. And Zach Wilson isn't you're not developing Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's already proven he can't be developed. He's just garbage. Mac Jones, at least Mac Jones at times was good. So if you want to say, well, we can get him kind of cheap, we can, whatever, give a 5th round pick or whatever, have Mac Jones back there, maybe develop him, and then if worst case scenario, like he has won games in the NFL, he has shown glimmers of being good for long stretches of time. Go do that. If they would have went and gotten Mac Jones on the cheap and he's the backup, I would have felt great about that. I would have felt absolutely fantastic about that. I would be blown away if they wouldn't got Zach Wilson. I'd be absolutely shocked. This rumor or whatever, I'm not sure where it came from. The fact that it's even out there is blowing my mind. Blowing my mind. I wasn't going to make a video when I first saw it. So I'll give you a peek behind the curtains. When I first saw it pop up, I saw it pop up on my YouTube recommended or whatever, and it was from After Further Review. It was their Zach Wilson video. And I thought, I'm not making a video on this because it's ridiculous to even talk about Zach Wilson. The Saints need so much help in so many different places to go get Zach Wilson. I was like, I'm not going to do that. It's crazy. Then I saw it pop up on Reddit. And I was like, well, maybe Reddit is just talking about the video from After Further Review. So I ignored it. Kept on going with my day. And then I see this. I'm like, well, if it's everywhere, now I got to talk about it. So let's listen to what T-Bob has to say about the Saints' possibility of trading for Zach Wilson. By the way, if you're wondering why we're starting a minute 33 into the video, the beginning of the video, he was talking about some linebacker from the Commanders that we signed on a 1-year deal. I don't even remember his name. It's a non-factor, non-issue. So I'm not going to waste a minute 33 seconds of y'all's life with that. Let's move on to the Zach Wilson talk.
Another thing to keep an eye on, there's some rumors starting to swirl about the Saints potentially pursuing Zach Wilson. And I should say that this is maybe more about just kind of looking, okay, who would Zach Wilson make sense for? And
Zach Wilson makes sense for State Farm. Zach Wilson makes sense for the UPS store down the street. Zach Wilson makes sense for some HR job, some account, whatever. I don't know what his degree's in. The last place he makes sense for is the NFL. the last place he makes sense for is quarterback. That's it. If he's going to be in the Superdome, he would be better off if he was walking up and down the stairs selling the honey roasted pecans. If he was selling those, he'd be more impactful than if he was on the sideline. The only reason, let me give you a little sneak peek too of how the big media looks at this. The only reason that people are still talking about Zach Wilson is because he was taken with the top 5 pick. That's it. If Zach Wilson was taken in the 3rd round or the 4th round, he'd be looked at the same way that Malik Willis and Sam Howell and players like that are looked at. Non-factors. Sam Howell was better last year than Zach Wilson has ever been in his career. Ryan Tannehill has been better in his career than Zach Wilson has ever been in his career. So I hate whenever the media attaches value to where someone's drafted. Once they are drafted, the rest goes out the window. Same with Trey Lance. If someone was like, well, Trey Lance, you're getting what did Trey Lance go? 3rd overall? It's like, you're getting a third overall quarterback prospect. It's like, brother, that's not the case anymore. Mitchell Trubisky was a 2nd overall, 3rd overall pick. Trey Lance, 3rd overall pick. At a certain point, you just forget about where they're drafted. Same with fantasy football. If you draft a guy in the 1st round, and in 6 weeks, 7 weeks later, he's a complete bust, you can't sit there and be try and trade for him and say, well, he's a 1st round pick. I need a ton back. So, hey, man, this sample size is more important than the draft position. So Zach Wilson being even tossed out there is just because of his draft, where he was drafted, which is crazy.
Currently, the New Orleans Saints backup quarterback situation after Jameis's departure is the lowest rated NFL quarterback of all time, and Jake Haener. So it's not a position that is in a good spot right now. That said, I ain't giving up resources for Zach Wilson.
No, hell no.
I ain't trading for him. I don't care if it's a 7th round pick, whatever. Well, also it's his contract. You're going to take that on. I think it's like a $10 or $11 million cap hit, something along those lines this year. I think that you wait and see if they end up cutting him, and then you try.
Here's the deal: if Zach Wilson told me, if I was the GM of the Saints, if Zach Wilson told me, I'll play for free. If he said, I will play for free, I don't even have to have a salary. I'll play for free. I'd tell him to get the hell out of my office. I'd tell him to get the hell out of my office and don't look back. Look at his baby hands on that football. Look at that. The salary, it's insane to even think about giving up anything for Zach Wilson. 7th round pick, 6th round pick, 2 dome dogs, whatever. But then the idea of paying him, then the idea of giving him millions of dollars to be a scrub, a bona fide scrub. This is, when I woke up this morning, I ate 6 eggs, oatmeal, chia seeds, coconut flakes, flaxseed, blueberries. When that was going on, I'd never in a million years thought that my day would be spent talking about the Saints, my Saints, your Saints, our Saints, possibly trading for Zach Wilson. We'd be better off if I just opened the window of the studio and I screamed out, does anybody want to play quarterback for the Saints? And then the first person that came and walked up to the window, just, all right, cool, sign him. You're better off there. They might have bigger hands than this guy.
To pounce, though New York has said that they're not going to move him if they can't get some sort of trade out of it. Taylor, would you pursue Zach Wilson if you were the Saints?
It depends.
Taylor, I swear to God, if you say yes, Taylor, I'm going to be upset. I think Taylor is the guy who previously said that during Saints games is when he goes to LA Fitness or wherever and does shoulder press. If he says that he'd pursue Zach Wilson, I'm going to be shocked.
Depends on what you'd have to give up. I would give up a 7th
Yeah,
round pick for him. Because like, what did Justin Fields go for? Justin
Maybe like
Fields,
a 6.
Yeah, so I mean, if you could get something like that out of him, yeah, why not? He came in relief of Rodgers, and he had ups and downs, obviously.
Ups and downs, brother. It was down. It was nothing but down. It is as down gets. Again, go get Drew Lock. Go get Sam Howell. Go get any of those other guys. Taylor Heineke. Any of those other guys who it's like, well, I mean, they have shown some kind of ability to play football. I don't know. And I have said this before. And I've said this before when I talk about Jake Haener. If the second the Saints make a move like this, and they're not going to make this move, but the second they do make a move similar to in this vein, that is all you need to know that the Saints don't plan on playing ever Jake Haener. I made the bold statement that I don't think Jake Haener will throw 5 passes in the regular season in his career as a Saint. I don't think he is, and that's just how third-string young late-round draft pick quarterbacks work. They don't usually see that second contract. The fact that we have, if we go get Joe Flacco, or we go get, I'm just going to make this up, we go get Sam Howell, or we go get Ryan Tannehill. That's the Saints kind of telling you, this is our backup quarterback. We don't plan on developing Jake Haener. We're not going to develop, you don't develop a third-string quarterback. So if Tannehill's on the roster, then that eliminates the backup position, which eliminates his chances of getting on the field, which then by the time his second contract comes up, they'll just let him walk. They'll just let him go. They're not going to pay. They're not going to extend a quarterback like that. So for all you Jake Haener fans, you better pray the Saints don't plan on trading for or getting a backup quarterback. I do think the Saints need a backup, though. There is, especially with Derek Carr last year going down a couple times, there is a need for a guy who can step in and win. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't go after Joe Flacco, or they haven't inquired about someone like Ryan Tannehill. Those are the guys you want as a backup. And I don't think Ryan Tannehill is great, but I know Ryan Tannehill can come in much like Andy Dalton did and just kind of steady the ship. Zach Wilson can't steady the ship. Zach Wilson's on one of those old school Sea-Doos that doesn't even have a seat. So the Saints do need a backup quarterback, but Zach Wilson, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, he's been a guy that's inconsistent, but like you said...
No, he's actually been consistent. He's been consistently ass.
You go look at your backup room. You have Jake Haener, who you saw some nice things of out of preseason, but outside of preseason, he has not played in the NFL. You have Nathan Peterman. You know what you're getting out of him, and it's not very good.
That's the lowest rated quarterback.
You want to hitch your wagon to Derek Carr, that's fine, but you got to have a little bit of insurance behind him, and you don't have it right now.
Yeah. But also, is Zach Wilson actually better than any of those guys?
No, Zach Wilson's not better than Nathan Peterman. And Zach Wilson isn't insurance. Exactly like I said 5 minutes ago, 2 things: young quarterback to develop as your backup, or guy who can step in if your starter gets hurt. Zach Wilson is neither of those things. So go get Sam Darnold. Go get someone like that who, are they good? No, but they can step in if you have to and be Andy Dalton. There's plenty of those guys out there. Didn't Carson Wentz just get signed by the Chiefs yesterday? Carson Wentz would have been a perfect example. Is Carson Wentz good? No, absolutely not. But Carson Wentz can just kind of steady the ship in case of an emergency. You don't fill your quarterback room with players like Zach Wilson.
I mean, is he better than Nathan Peterman? I'd probably take Zach Wilson over Nathan Peterman.
Really, I'm saying, but what if we honestly looked at the numbers next to each other? I feel you.
Yeah, Peterman's better.
He should be significantly better than Nathan Peterman,
not.
But I don't. I mean, I'm thinking about that 3-0 game and some of those other games that they had in New York. I don't think Zach Wilson has too many numbers to write home about either. Then again, it's a Jet, so he's not exactly put in a great situation. So it's something to keep an eye on. I will agree with this. Maybe Zach Wilson's the answer. Maybe he's not. I do agree with Taylor that the backup quarterback situation is unsettled.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what question is Zach Wilson the answer to? Who's the worst quarterback in the NFL? Who was a huge draft bust? Who are we playing Jeopardy where it's like who was a quarterback drafted out of BYU by the New York Jets who was an enormous draft bust and absolutely terrible? Who is Zach Wilson? Like that's the only question he's the answer to.
And if you're looking at weaknesses on this roster, I think there's still improvement that could be made in that regard. I see you looking up numbers. Do you have anything?
So Nathan Peterman, 4 touchdowns, 13 interceptions.
Hell yeah.
Zach Wilson, 23 touchdowns, 25 interceptions. He's at 57% completion percentage. Nathan Peterman at 53. Here's the big one. Zach Wilson, a 73.2 rating. Nathan Peterman, 39.4.
Okay.
I would rather Nathan Peterman, if even hearing those stats, I would rather Nathan Peterman's experience level and over the volatility of Zach Wilson. I am not interested in Zach Wilson at all. I'm not interested in Nathan Peterman at all. Like I said, the backup room is a disaster. The backup room is a problem. So go get, I keep saying these names who have already been signed, but go get your Joe Flacco. Go get your Carson Wentz. Go get your Sam Darnold. Like, go get those guys. Those guys are out there. It's the same thing as like when I'm playing Madden or whatever. Why would I trade for a answer when I could have just signed one? Like, you're making it so much more difficult on yourself to go trade for Zach Wilson. And if you're going to trade for Zach Wilson, it's a little different because of the contract. But if you're going to trade for Zach Wilson, trade for Justin Fields. What was Fields had for like a 6th? I would much rather have Fields on a 1-year situation, pay him if he's good, whatever. You know, however you want to play that out. But I mean, I just don't see any redeeming quality or reason of why you would do this. And there's so many better backup quarterbacks. There's so many different answers. I would love to see a list of like free agent quarterbacks out there right now. Because I guarantee you the top 5, it's like, oh, yeah, obviously him over Zach Wilson.
Okay.
So
yeah,
he's a step up.
He's a step up. He is a step up. But is it worth taking on, what is it, a $10 or $11 million cap hit?
No, that's what I was going to say too with Peterman. Peterman gives you some experience as far as like he's been in the league longer, whatever. But you also, it's like you don't have to give up draft capital to get him, and you don't have to pay him $10 or $11 million. So all that factored in, to me, balances out the numbers that they just read off for Peterman.
I mean, I guess the Saints could make it work for 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a 1-year rental.
Okay. Question. If you're getting Zach Wilson on a 1-year rental, why would you do that? Because Zach Wilson, if you're going to trade for Zach Wilson, you're more than likely, part of you believes he might be able to play. You might be able to develop him. You don't get him on a 1-year rental, he's not going to play. Derek Carr is your starting quarterback. So I could hear the argument of like, if someone said, well, I mean, look, Zach Wilson still has a lot of promise, he's young, he's this, we want to develop him, we'll bring him in on the cheap, give him a couple of years, we'll see where we're at. Carr, by the time his contract's over, Wilson might be ready to play. So okay, I mean, I could hear something like that, but a 1-year rental makes absolutely no sense. You're going to bring him in, Carr's going to play, you're going to take the cap hit, and then what? You're not going to re-sign him. At that point, you're hoping he didn't do anything. So I don't know. It's just a really weird. Like Nick Mullen. Nick Mullins played a little bit for the Vikings last year, former Southern Miss great. I would assume his numbers are probably better than Zach Wilson. So it's like, why aren't we talking about going and getting Nick Mullins? I'll tell you why, because Nick Mullins wasn't a top 5 draft pick. It's weird.
I don't know if it's Wilson, but they do need help in that regard.
Yeah, agreed.
Wow.
I agree with that last part. It's not. I don't agree with that. It is not Wilson, but they do need to get a legitimate backup. Like Peterman isn't it. I'm not sure why they passed on Flacco, and I'm not sure why they passed on some of these other guys, even like Carson Wentz. I'm not sure the Carson Wentz deal. I don't know what the Chiefs gave him, but having Wentz back there would have been fine. having Flacco back there would have been fine. So, there's a lot of Tannehill. The same thing. I'm not sure what you could sign Tannehill for, a 1-year deal, but I would assume it's pretty cheap. And he would be a legit backup. He'd be a legit backup, can step in if need be, just like Andy Dalton was. So, crazy rumor. But I want to unequivocally say, no, Zach Wilson, we can end the Zach Wilson trade rumors. Ladies and gentlemen, go down in the comments below. Let me know where you come down on this. I will see you in the next video.